In December of 2012, a woman in Hartford, Connecticut, stood in line at a police gun buyback, holding a rifle wrapped in a blanket. Her father carried it home from Germany in 1945 and never spoke a word about it. She wanted the $100 gift card. The officer pulled back the blanket, went quiet, and refused to take it. Here's the part nobody talks about. That rifle was a Stormgewehr 44 worth as much as $25,000. And her father wasn't unusual. He was one of millions of men who came home armed and stayed silent about it for the rest of their lives. Some of what they hid will stun you. Number 14 on this list cost the American government exactly $2.10 to build, and they made 1 million of them in 11 weeks. Number 9 still sends bomb squads into quiet suburban attics. And number 3 was fired inside the Oval Office, a few feet from the President of the United States, and he never heard a thing. Wait for that one. Understand something first. These weapons weren't hidden out of shame. In 1968, the federal government gave every veteran with an unregistered war trophy exactly 30 days to come forward. Miss that window, and the man who captured it at 19 became a felon facing 10 years in federal prison. So he hid it from the ATF, from the neighbors, and from you. Before we start, hit subscribe, because every week we dig up the weapons and the stories that got buried with the men who carried them. Let's count down 25 secret weapons World War II veterans hid from their own families until the day they died. Number 25, the Luger P08. If there was one thing every GI in Europe wanted, it was a Luger. The War Department made trophies official on August 31, 1944, with circular number 353. A soldier could keep a captured rifle or pistol, so long as an officer signed his capture papers. But the paperwork never mentioned the catch. Retreating German units knew exactly how badly Americans wanted these pistols, and men were warned that a Luger sitting on a table in an abandoned dugout might be wired to something underneath. Your grandfather knew a man who checked first. Maybe he knew one who didn't. Today, an all-matching wartime Luger brings anywhere from $800 to $5,000. And the rare Black Widow variants push close to $4,000 on their own. Most of them are still sitting exactly where the veteran left them, in a shoebox, under the socks, behind the water heater. Number 24, the live grenade in the coffee tin. Not every souvenir was legal, and not every souvenir was safe. Capture papers never covered explosives. Ordnance officers were supposed to inspect every trophy, but a grenade fits in a pocket, and a footlocker crossed the ocean unopened. In Willows, California, a family cleaning out a deceased veteran's garage opened an old tin and found a live Japanese hand grenade from the Pacific War. The county bomb squad came. Then Air Force explosive ordnance technicians from Beale Air Force Base came, drove it to empty ground, and destroyed it. This happens in ordinary American towns far more often than anyone says out loud. The FBI publishes bulletins about decades-old military explosives surfacing in attics. If Grandpa served in the Pacific and there's a box nobody has ever opened, do not shake it. Make a phone call instead. Number 23, the Shin Gun-To officer's sword. When Japan surrendered in 1945, every Japanese officer was ordered to hand over his sword, and untold thousands of them came home in American duffel bags. Most were factory military blades. But some officers carried ancestral family swords refitted into army mounts, blades that had served one Japanese family for 3 centuries before spending the next 70 years in a Nebraska attic. Veterans rarely displayed them. Too much memory attached to how they were taken. And near the end of his life, more than one Pacific veteran quietly asked his kids to send the sword back across the ocean. There are organizations today whose entire purpose is matching surrendered blades to the families that lost them. If your family has one, pull the handle The swordsmith's signature may still be cut into the tang, where it has waited since before America existed. Number 22. The MP40 submachine gun. This is where the hiding stops being about modesty and starts being about prison. Capture papers covered rifles and pistols. Machine guns were never on the list, but they came home anyway, broken down in duffel bags, buried in crates of machine parts. Under the National Firearms Act, an unregistered machine gun is a federal felony, and the government offered exactly one way out: a 30-day amnesty, November 2nd through December 1st of 1968. Register it, no questions asked. Roughly 65,000 weapons came out of the woodwork. Every veteran who missed that window because he didn't hear about it or didn't trust the offer became a felon overnight, staring at up to 10 years. So the MP40 stayed under the floorboards, and Dad never brought it up. A legally registered example now trades for more than a new pickup truck. The unregistered ones are still out there. Nobody knows how many. That's not a guess. It is literally the case that nobody knows. Number 21. The Stormgewehr 44. The rifle from our opening. The STG-44 was the first true assault rifle ever fielded, built by Germany in 1944, and the design concept, the AK-47, followed 3 years later. The woman in Hartford had no idea what was under the blanket, because her father never told her. He carried it home from Europe, put it away, and kept it put away until he died. When she tried to trade it for a $100 gift card in December 2012, the officers running the buyback recognized it on sight and refused to accept it, because accepting it meant destroying it. And this was a rifle worth as much as $25,000. Read that number again. A quarter of a house in some counties, wrapped in a blanket, 20 minutes from a shredder. Now ask the uncomfortable question: how many weren't stopped? Buybacks don't keep records of what they melt. Number 20. The Mark I trench knife. Brass knuckles fused to a double-edged dagger, designed for the trenches of 1918 and pulled out of storage in 1942 for Army Rangers and Marine Raiders. A man who carried one wore the answer to every close-quarters argument on his fist. Here's the strange part. The same government that issued it to your grandfather bans it for you. Knuckle knives are outlawed in some form in roughly 24 states, and even where ownership is legal, many states say it never leaves the house. Veterans understood exactly what a Mark I looked like to a small-town police officer, which is why so many of these knives lived out the century, zipped in a canvas bag up in the garage rafters, oiled once a decade, shown to no one. The bronze hilt turns green when it's neglected. Collectors call that patina. Grandpa called it none of your business. Number 19. The theater-made knuckle knife. When supply couldn't deliver a fighting knife, machinists' mates and Seabees built their own, and they built them out of the war itself. Blades ground from truck springs. Hilts cast from aluminum melted off crashed aircraft. Grips stacked from plexiglass cut out of a bomber's shattered canopy. Collectors call them theater knives, and no two are alike, because each one was made by one man, in one machine shop, on one island, usually against regulations, which is exactly why veterans hid them. A theater knife was never issued, so there were no papers for it, and a homemade knuckle knife is just as illegal in most states as a factory one. If your family is lucky enough to have one, look closely at the blade. Some men engraved the islands into the steel as they went. Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Peleliu. A war diary you can hold in one hand. Number 18. The Nambu Type 14. The Japanese officer's pistol, and after the Luger, the trophy Pacific GIS wanted most. Japanese officers bought their sidearms with their own pay, which means every captured Nambu was one specific man's personal property, and the American who took it usually knew precisely how it became available. That's the freight these pistols carried home, and no collector's guide will price it. More than one Pacific veteran kept a Nambu in a drawer for 60 years and never cleaned it, never oiled it, never let his sons touch it, and when he died, the family found it still wearing sand. He wasn't preserving a gun. He was refusing to relive an afternoon. Values climb steadily as the Pacific generation passes, but ask any estate appraiser what paperwork comes with a Nambu. Nothing. No papers, no stories. Silence was the accessory. Number 17, the Type 94 pistol, the Nambu's ugly little brother and the most dangerous handgun of the entire war to its own owner. The Type 94 has its sear bar exposed on the left side of the frame, which means pressure on the outside of the pistol can fire it. No trigger required. GIs traded stories of Japanese officers offering one in surrender, then firing it by squeezing the frame, and whether or not that happened to the man telling the story, the mechanical flaw is completely real. Veterans who brought a Type 94 home treated it like a snake in a jar, unloaded, wrapped, buried at the bottom of the footlocker, because a pistol that can fire itself has no safe side. Collectors now pay real money for crude, late-war examples, precisely because of the desperation stamped into them. Time turns a hazard into an heirloom. The vets never made that mistake. Number 16, the Arisaka Type 99, the standard Japanese infantry rifle and probably the most common Pacific bringback of them all. Look at the top of the receiver and you'll usually find a scar. The imperial chrysanthemum ground off or struck through. That flower marked the rifle as the emperor's personal property, and surrendering Japanese armorers defaced it themselves rather than let the crest pass intact into foreign hands. Your grandfather's Arisaka probably came home with its stock sawed in half, what collectors call a duffel cut, because a full-length rifle didn't fit a duffel bag, and the shipping inspectors didn't need to know. Then it went over the garage joists and stayed there for 50 years. The crude, last-ditch examples, mismatched wood and rough steel, now draw collectors specifically because you can read Japan's collapse in the tool marks. That ground-off flower tells the whole story of 1945 in 1 square inch. Number 15, the M3 fighting knife. Issued starting in 1943 to airborne troops and anyone who didn't rate a bayonet, the M3 was a plain, honest fighting tool, a dagger-profiled blade with no pretense of camp chores about it, made by the million by American cutlery firms that had been stamping out kitchen knives 18 months earlier. Paratroopers jumped into Normandy with one strapped to the boot. So why did it end up hidden? Because a double-edged fighting knife counts as a dirk or dagger under most state carry laws, and the same man who wore one on his shin over Sainte-Mère-Église could be arrested for wearing it to the feed store in 1955. Think about what that felt like. So it went into the toolbox, under the oil rags. Ask anyone who grew up on a farm in that era where Dad kept his jump knife and watched them point without hesitating. They all knew. They also knew not to say. Number 14, the FP45 Liberator. Here's your $2 gun. In the summer of 1942, the Guide Lamp Division of General Motors in Anderson, Indiana, stamped out 1 million of these single-shot 45 caliber pistols in about 11 weeks. Delivered cost to the government, $2.10 apiece. The plan was to slip them to resistance fighters behind enemy lines, so a man could walk up close, fire his one shot, and take a better weapon off the soldier who fell. The joke inside the OSS was that it took longer to load than to build. The instructions came as a wordless cartoon strip because the person opening the box might read any language or none at all. Agents and veterans who kept one kept very quiet about where it had been, and a wartime original with its box now brings thousands at auction. Not bad for the cheapest firearm America ever mass-produced. Number 13, the Fairbairn Sykes Commando Dagger. Designed by William Fairbairn and Eric Sykes, two hard men of the Shanghai Municipal Police, and put into production at Wilkinson's Sword of London in 1941. The Fairbairn Sykes is a slender, double-edged dagger with exactly one purpose, and that purpose is not opening letters. British commandos wore it as a badge of identity. American Rangers and OSS officers picked it up in training and never put it down. And after the war, it became the most copied fighting knife on earth. It also became, in many states, a textbook illegal dagger the moment it left the house. The men who carried them understood the difference between what they had earned and what a county judge would tolerate. So the knife lived in the sock drawer and came out for reunions. If you find one, check for the Wilkinson stamp. The early production pieces fund retirements. Number 12, the V42 Stiletto. Made by W.R. Case & Sons for exactly one unit. The first Special Service Force, the joint American and Canadian outfit the Germans called the Devil's Brigade. The V42 entered service in 1942 with a needlepoint, a thumbprint groove on the blade so a man could index the edge in total darkness, and a pointed pommel for when the argument continued. Fewer men were ever issued a V42 than live in a small town, which is why originals now sell for the price of a used car, and why fakes outnumber the real ones. Force veterans guarded theirs jealously and silently. It was a membership card to something most of them refused to describe at any dinner table, ever. The unit held reunions into the men's 90s, and more than one V42 only surfaced when the last estate did. Some memberships you keep for life. Number 11, the German gravity knife. Luftwaffe paratroopers jumped with a knife that opened itself. Point it down, press the lever, and the blade slides free by gravity alone, which mattered enormously when one hand was tangled in parachute cord and the other hand was all a man had left. GIS took them off captured paratroopers as fast as they could find them. Then they carried them home to a country that would spend the next 70 years outlawing the mechanism. The Federal Switchblade Act of 1958 shut gravity knives out of interstate commerce, and New York kept arresting people over gravity knives until 2019. Sit with that. A tool designed to save a tangled man's life became a misdemeanor in a coat pocket. The veterans figured that out early, and the knife from Crete or Normandy went into the cigar box with the medals. Both stayed equally undiscussed. Number 10, the MG-42 machine gun, the fastest firing infantry gun of the war, 1,200 rounds a minute, a sound American soldiers compared to tearing canvas. And some of them came home. Not officially, never officially. A belt-fed machine gun breaks down into pieces that look remarkably like industrial hardware, and more than one receiver crossed the Atlantic in a crate marked machine parts. Under the National Firearms Act, that gun was a felony the moment it landed unregistered, and once the 30-day window of 1968 closed, no legal path remained at all, which produced a very specific American scene repeated for decades. A widow in her 80s, a car trunk, and a quiet drive to a police station or a museum to hand over what her husband could never admit owning. Museums still get these calls today. The staff know better than to ask for dates. Everyone in the room already knows the answer. Number 9, the Type 89 knee mortar, the bomb squad item as promised. The Japanese Type 89 grenade discharger earned its American nickname from its curved base plate, and GIS, who braced a captured one against the thigh to fire it, learned in one shot that the recoil breaks a femur. It launches an explosive shell, which makes it a destructive device under federal law, and there was never, at any point, a legal way to mail one home. Men did anyway. It came apart, it fit in a crate, and it was the single most feared piece of Japanese infantry kit in the jungle. So it was the trophy that proved the story. This is why explosive ordnance teams still get called to estate cleanouts 80 years later. The tube is a felony. The shells are a bomb squad call. If you inherit anything shaped like a fat piece of stovepipe with Japanese characters on it, stop and get help before you touch the box it came in. Number 8. The Sweetheart Grip Pistol. The most human thing on this list. Soldiers pried the factory grips off a captured Luger or P38 and replaced them with clear panels cut from the plexiglass canopy of a wrecked aircraft, and under the right-hand panel went a photograph of the girl back home. Collectors call them sweetheart grips. Every single one is a double artifact, the enemy's pistol and an American's homesickness fused into one object. Now think about why a man would hide that. He comes home, he marries the girl in the photograph, or he doesn't. Either way, the pistol in the closet holds a version of him from 1944 that he never showed anyone again. Estate appraisers repeat the same line over and over. The widow knew about the gun, but she never knew her own face was inside it. Somebody in your family tree owned something like this. Ask before the estate sale finds it first. Number 7. The Silk Escape Map. Not everything hidden was built to kill. Some of it was built to get home. British intelligence branch MI9 and its American counterpart printed roughly 3.5 million maps on silk and rayon. Because silk does not rustle when a guard walks past, and it survives salt water, sweat, and years sewn into a jacket lining. A compass hid inside a tunic button. Maps and files traveled into German prison camps inside rigged Monopoly boards, built by Waddingtons of Leeds and delivered through charity parcels. By one historian's count, 744 downed airmen freed themselves with this gear, and MI9 was credited with helping more than 35,000 Allied personnel make it back. Here's the thing about Escape Kit. The men who carried it were ordered never to speak of it, and nobody ever told them the order expired. Thousands of veterans kept a silk map folded in a Bible until the funeral. Go look through the button tin. Seriously. Number 6. The Lapel Dagger. A blade the length of your thumb, flat as a coin, sewn behind the lapel of a jacket where a searching hand slides right past it. British Special Operations and the American OSS issued these to agents headed into occupied Europe. On a cold theory, a man who has just been captured gets searched once, confidently, and rarely searched well. There was no sport in the lapel dagger, and no ceremony either. It existed for the worst 30 seconds of an agent's life, which is why the ones that came home were almost never shown to anyone. Displaying it invites the question, and the question has no dinner table answer. Today, a concealed push dagger is flatly illegal to carry in most of the country, and a blade sewn into clothing is worse. The men who actually earned the right to carry one hid it deepest of all. That tells you everything about that generation. Number 5. The Welrod. A silenced pistol that refuses to look like a pistol. It looks like a bicycle pump. The Welrod is a single-shot, bolt-action design built for Britain's Special Operations Executive and used by OSS men as well, and with a fresh suppressor, it fired at roughly 73 decibels, quieter than a slammed car door. A proper Welrod carries no maker's marks, no name, no factory stamp, nothing to trace, because the people who issued it expected it to be abandoned in countries where Britain had never officially set foot. Only a few thousand were ever made. And here's the modern trap. An unregistered suppressor is an NFA felony, 10 years of exposure, exactly like a machine gun. So any Welrod that came home in a kit bag went straight into deep hiding and mostly never came out. Museums hold a handful. The rest are wherever quiet men put quiet things. Number 4. The Stinger Pen Gun. A single-shot .22 caliber built into a tube the size of a fountain pen. OSS produced more than 50,000 of them, and the design brief was grim. Fire it once at arm's length, then throw it away. The Stinger existed for the moment when an agent had nothing left. One round, One chance, no negotiation. Surviving examples are scarce, partly because disposal was the whole design, and partly because of what happened to the ones that made it home. A firearm disguised as a pen isn't any other weapon under the National Firearms Act, and an unregistered one carries the same federal felony as a machine gun, meaning the veteran who kept his Stinger as a souvenir of the most frightening job of the war was committing a crime with a fountain pen every day it existed. So it never sat in the desk. It sat inside the desk, behind the drawer, where more than one son has found one decades later and quietly slid it back. Number 3, the high standard HDM, the one I promised you. In 1942, OSS Chief William Donovan walked into the Oval Office carrying a suppressed .22 pistol and a sandbag. While President Roosevelt worked at his desk, Donovan fired into the sandbag, and the President of the United States never heard the shots. Then Donovan handed him the warm pistol and told him what had just happened, 10 feet away, in the most protected room in America. That was the demonstration, and the HDM passed. It armed OSS agents through the war and kept serving quiet professionals for decades after. Now, the veteran who brought one home faced the same math as the Welrod. An unregistered suppressor means up to 10 years federal, no matter how it was earned. So the quietest gun of the war got the quietest retirement in American history, wrapped in oilcloth under the attic insulation. If any weapon on this list is still sleeping in 1,000 American houses, it's this one. Number 2, the Sedgley glove pistol. A .38 caliber single-shot pistol riveted to the back of a heavy leather work glove, built by the Sedgley Company of Philadelphia for the Office of Naval Intelligence and the Marines. Designer Stanley Haight's idea was brutal in its simplicity. The plunger sits above the knuckles, so the wearer fires by punching. No drawing, no aiming, no warning. Throw the punch, and the glove does the rest. It sounds invented until you stand in front of one in a museum case, made in small numbers, issued for close work in the Pacific, and almost impossible to explain in civilian life, because there is no innocent sentence that begins with "this glove is also a gun." A disguised firearm sits under the National Firearms Act with a felony attached, so almost none ever surfaced, and genuine examples now command extraordinary prices. Somewhere in America, there is still a work glove in a cellar that weighs too much. Nobody has looked at it twice in 80 years. Number 1, the M1911A1. He was never allowed to keep. Number 1 isn't a captured enemy weapon at all, and that is exactly the point. It's the pistol your grandfather carried through his entire war, the Colt M1911A1, with United States property stamped into the frame. He could bring home a Luger with the right signature, but the sidearm that actually kept him alive from Anzio to the Rhine belonged to the government, and keeping it was, in the law's own language, theft. American riflemen ran notice after notice in the late 1940s, telling veterans to turn them in. Many didn't. Some ground off the property stamp, which turned a keepsake into a second crime. So the most personal weapon of the whole war got hidden, not from shame and not from memory, but from his own government. And here's the ending that should make you angry. Decades later, the government sold its warehouse surplus 1911s back to the public at about $1,000 apiece. The pistol Grandpa could have gone to prison for loving, sold back to his grandchildren at retail. They didn't forget these weapons. You were made to. Before you go, there is one thing you can still do about all of this, and it costs nothing. Here is your challenge. Tell me in the comments which weapon on this list surprised you most, and whether anyone in your family found one after the funeral. I read every story. That knowledge did not die. It just went quiet. It's time to start listening again.